my question for Sestina are two. One is what the story is about, and the other is I want another person to pick up. Yes, to pick up to describe the development of tears in this poem. Melody, you tell us the story, and then Chloe, maybe just pick up one element to describe. There are 6 elements: house, grandmother, child, stove, almanac, and tears. You just choose one to describe, okay? Melody? Yeah, so tell us what happened in the story.
I think that this poem is about the author, and since her father passed away in her young age, and her mother was hospitalized, so she lived with her grandma. And this poem is about what happened when she lived with her.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I think it is. Let me explain this first. This is also something David asked me to remind you of, and that is we shouldn't equate the speaker with the poet, but in lyrics, sometimes there are some autobiographical elements, and in Robert Hayden's Those Winter Sundays, and in Sestina, we do see the images or the reflection of the poet's own sentiment in the poems. But maybe we shouldn't think that the speaker is definitely, or the little girl here is definitely Elizabeth Bishop. Okay, so what Melody just pointed out is something good for our reference, and that is Elizabeth Bishop. She herself had a lonely childhood because her father died when she was very young, and then her mother was institutionalized, and then she lived with her first her paternal grandparents, and then her maternal grandparent. So in a way, the story does remind us of her and her background. Okay, and we can even think of the house here, the major element, the house, as a house which is not which represent a fragmentary family, in which there is only the grandmother and the little girl, the child, but not the parents. So that does make the poem related to Elizabeth Bishop's own life. Yeah. Okay. But what exactly happened in this poem? So Melody just gave us a kind of background. Okay. So what happened when the child and the grandmother live in a house? What has been described in the poem?
They seem to have a hard life.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see that? Where do you see that they have a hard time?
In the first stanza.
Mm-hmm.
Reading the jokes from the almanac, laughing and talking to hide her tears.
Mm-hmm.
From the tears.
Yes. So tears, out of the 6 elements, as I explained in the online lecture, this is a poem. The Sestina is both the title of the poem and the form of the poem, Sestina, and it has a 6-line stanza, 6个6行的诗段, and then the last words of the 6 lines are repeated in every stanza, and they form the kind of circular elements like house, grandmother, stove, child, almanac, and tears. So just now, Melody pointed out that tears here is an element that shows the sadness of the grandmother and the grandchild, right? Okay. Where else do you see the hardship? How about this one, the grandmother shivers, stanza 4, and says she thinks the house feels chilly, and puts more wood in the stove.
Yes.
But does she suffer all the way through? Is she the same all the way through? Like, is she crying all the way through? Yes or no? Like here, when she feels in the first stanza, we see that she hides her tears, and then in stanza 4, we see that she puts and then she cooks she makes the tea for the child, and then she put more wood in the stove, and then in the fifth and in the following stanzas, in the last stanza, she sings to the marvelous stove. So what does this imply?
Hide her tears.
You still think that here when she sings, she's hiding her tears, but not being happy? Okay. Actually, I think there are. This is again open to interpretation, but I always think that when she's able to sing, it means that at least she's calmer. She's no longer crying, and that's a kind of improvement of her mood. Yeah. Okay. Chloe? So you're talking about the tears or which element?
Tears.
Uh-huh.
In the first stanza, last line, it mentioned about the grandmother want to hide her tears.
Yes.
And in the third stanza, the child is watching the tea kettle's small hard tears.
Yeah.
I think although the grandmother is trying to hide her tears from the child is aware of it. And the second stanza, her
equinoctial.
There are tears.
Wait. Slower. So what does it mean, equinoctial tears?
I think she believes in fate and predestination.
So it's almost like saying that she has seasonal tears. You know that every year, at a certain point in the season, she cries. You know, so the sadness is something that's regular for her. Yeah. And foretold by the almanac. Yeah. Go ahead. How about the child's seeing the water drops out of the tea kettle as tears, the small hard tears. So you think that it's a reflection of her being aware of the grandmother's tears?
Yes.
And
the last stanza is that it's time to plant tears. I think means it is time to forget sad past. And the grandmother doesn't cry anymore.
Grandmother, what?
doesn't want to cry anymore.
Oh, okay. How about this part? I think the second to last stanza is the most difficult one. This is after the child draws the first house. Okay, and then in front of the house there is a man with buttons like tears. So this is hard to understand, right?
Yeah.
And then let me read the next stanza. But secretly, while the grandmother busies herself about the stove, the little moons fall down like tears from between the pages of the almanac into the flower bed the child has carefully placed in front of the house. So what does this mean? The little moons fall down like tears. No?
No, I don't know.
Can anyone try to answer this question? A rigid house with a winding pathway, buttons like tears, and then the little moon fall down like tears, and then at the end, the inscrutable house. What do these elements mean? How about Jennifer?
I think maybe it's when the child look at the moon, and when she's looking at the moon and she thinks about her family, she maybe used to have, and so she dropped her tears. And because she's looking at the moon, so when she dropped the tears, it's like the little moons fall down like tears.
Okay. But why do the tears fall between the pages of the almanac? Almanac 是农民历 a kind of calendar for the farmers.
因为是满月吗？
I think you can read this almanac as a calendar, and then the moons fall between the pages, meaning between maybe the days.
The time they had.
But yeah, the little moons fall down like tears between the pages and then into the flower bed. So now we have one interpretation, and that is little moons are actually the girl's projection. It could be her tears. Okay, but then we need to follow through with the interpretation to try to understand why the tears fall through the pages of the almanac and then into the flower bed the child plays in front of the house. And then at the end, the almanac says, "Time to plant tears." How about Tiffany? Any possible answers? No? How about Grace? For me, this is a bit like a surreal image, or a surreal scene, which shows the passing of the days. Day by day. Usually when we think of the passing of days, we think of sunrise, sunset. But here is the moon falling. The moon falling, each one, one day after another. Okay, so the passing of days, and then the moons fall in between the pages, because if we look at one page of the almanac as one day, then in between the pages are the midnight, the time for the midnight, right? Okay, so the moon falls in between the pages, suggesting the passing of time, into the flower bed to suggest that both like the grandmother, the child is also trying to adjust to the sense of loss. And she's also producing something. Like the grandmother is doing housework. The child is drawing the houses, doing some drawing, and then planting some flowers. So she has a flower bed, and the tears, which either suggest the tears of hers or the passing of the days, the moons, or maybe both of them, the passing of the days and her own tears, are together in the flower bed to help her produce flowers. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm talking about? I think the flower or flower bed does give us a sense of hope. That at least some life is produced. Something beautiful. And also, here, the almanac says that it's time to plant tears. It's not to bury tears or to dry your tears, to wipe your tears away. Because planting tears, tears can become water, to be nourishing, to help produce flowers. So I think that the different elements here are indeed being put together to produce resources or images for them to move on. To say that it's not to like bury your tears or to wipe your tears away. I guess tears are always there for them. For one who is traumatized, maybe the sadness will always be there. But then the sadness may not be immobilizing, 让你不能够前进. It may become deeper, and then you can still move on. So I think for me it's this idea. Just now Melody says that she still thinks that the grandmother singing is a way of disguise. This is actually a possible interpretation, because for one thing, the child at the end draws another inscrutable house. I think that to say that her artwork is inscrutable, it could mean that there is still implied in the artwork a lot of sadness that the other people cannot understand. So I think that's one idea of it being inscrutable. Yeah, but I still think that by comparison, the inscrutable house is better than the rigid house. The rigid house may suggest a sense of confinement, a kind of constraint that she feels about one house that she doesn't like to stay in. It may not be the grandmother's house, but another house that she doesn't like. And then a man with buttons like tears. I think this is purely the child's projection. This is like when the child sees the tea kettle, she feels that the water drops, the steam and the water drops on the tea kettle are tears. This is her projection. Even either with the awareness of grandmother's sadness or with projecting her own sadness. I think both can be a possible way of interpreting the poem. Yeah, this is a rather interesting but also difficult poem. I hope if you don't understand anything, make sure that you ask. Otherwise, I'll just skip it. But I think if you pay attention to the alteration of the 6 elements, you see that let me see. All the 6 elements get to be changed along the way in a poem. Just now we talked about grandmother, how she's busy. I think I have my summary here. Grandmother doing housekeeping. She develops from hiding her tears to taking care of the child, like making the house warmer. Being more active in providing a comfortable environment. To singing to the marvelous stove. At the beginning, it's marvel stove. It's almost like, and then the marvel stove are capitalized, 好像童话一样。其实这个Cecina 她的写作是很我不知道怎么讲，就是很神奇的，对我来说很神奇的。In the sense that it has an adult's perspective, but also a child's perspective. 像那个 Marvel Stove 用大写，好像是那个我们讲童话里面那些家具都是可以动的，都是像是那个人一样，所以是 Marvel Stove. But at the end, the grandmother sings to the marvelous stove. It seems that she herself is appreciating the stove, and appreciating the housework she does. Yeah, and then the marvel stove and the almanac, I think, suggest reality. In 2 senses. One is a daily routine, like the moon's falling down, or the almanac, one page after another, or almanac becoming the bird hovering over the whole house. It's all suggesting that daily routine or time passes, kind of ruling over them. But also, I think marble stove, as I just said about grandmother, is part of the domestic scene. 就 daily routine 有2种，一个是 calendar time， 一个是那个家事家务。那这边那个就是由 almanac 看marble stove 来代表。And also you can see that in the beginning they are passive objects in the house being like taken out or being used by the grandmother. But in I think the 5th stanza, both the marble stove and the almanac says something. It was to be. I know what I know. Okay, and what they mean, I think I explained them in the online lecture. Let me just say here that I think there is an opposition here between the 2 elements and the child. The 2 elements suggesting reality, and the child being imaginative. So I think that both reality and the imagination helps the child and the grandmother, survive whatever sadness they have. So the child uses drawing and planting flower as a way of surviving her sadness. So basically, Sestina is a very well-structured poem. 不要忘记它是6个6行加上1个3行，然后那个 6 elements 在每一段都会出现，然后最后一段的时候是头尾，所以它那个结构是非常非常工整的。可是另外一方面，那个 Elizabeth Bishop seemed to be using a kind of intricate art form to work out her own sadness, or to work out a way of survival through art, through artistic creation. And that's why to produce such a poem, I believe she needs to revise it many, many times. Yeah, to make sure that the 6 elements are placed in the right place, and then they are not too boring, they are meaningful, etc.